So what is the best camera for YouTube this year? Well, right now there's a major battle between the Canon M50 and
the Sony A6400.
So in this video, we're gonna be talking about the pros and cons of each of them to look for the true winner. Coming up. Hey, what's up? Sean here.
Omar here.
And this is Think Media, bringing you the best tips and tools for building your influence with online video. And on this channel, we do a lot of tips and strategy videos as well as tech gear reviews, just like this one. So if you're new here, consider subscribing.
So these cameras both have a lot of differences, but they also have a lot of things in common that make them perfect cameras for YouTube and content creating. So let's get into them. So both of these cameras have a flip out screen or a flip up screen. So if you're vlogging or if you're just creating by yourself, you can see yourself. They also have incredible autofocus, so you don't ever have to worry about yourself being out of focus. Just tap the screen and you're in focus. And then if you want to level up your audio, you have the ability to because they both have mic inputs. Both these cameras have interchangeable lenses, so if you bought the camera with the kit lens, you can upgrade it in the future to level up your video and photo game. They both shoot incredible video at 1080 and 4K. They also have great photo quality, so if you want to use it for social media like Instagram, level up your thumbnails, it's an all-in-one camera. And then they both have a great small form factor, not taking up too much space in your kit.
And then one final commonality is that neither of the cameras have IBIS, which stands for in-body image stabilization. Now that's kind of been a downside that people have been criticizing this camera, but in this video, we're gonna talk about how it's really not that big of a deal and actually puts these two cameras on the same playing field. The first advantage of the Canon M50 is hands down the price. It is the better value, no question. At $600 with the kit lens, you have an awesome content creation tool that is much more accessible for people on a budget. The other thing to consider is that investing in just the camera and the lens is not the only thing you should be considering as a content creator. You want to get a tripod, maybe a microphone, some lighting, some other accessories for vlogging. And so thinking about your total budget is important, with the Sony coming in at $400 more just to get started. Additionally, the lenses for your Canon M50 are also gonna be more affordable. One of the top lenses we recommend for upgrading the M50, especially if you wanna vlog, is the 11-22 lens. That lens runs around $350, whereas for the Sony, that lens will run you almost $900 additional dollars. So for the price of just getting an A6400, you can not only get this camera with the kit lens, but also upgrade some other lenses and other accessories, which is something you should definitely consider. The M50 also wins when it comes to its ease of use and its overall body layout. The fact that the flip screen goes to the side allows you to put a microphone on top, whereas on the Sony A6400, that's a little bit of a challenge blocking the flip up screen. The other thing about Canons is that generally they are just a little bit easier to use. The menu layout, the understanding of it all, the ability to just intuitively grasp the learning curve of the M50. In fact, Canon even includes a beginner photography mode that will educate you on how to get good image quality. So definitely if you're more on the beginner side of things, or you want a camera that's not gonna trip you up with technical know-how, the M50 has the advantage there. But we definitely need to talk about some of the downsides and cons of the M50, and there are a few. The first one is 4K video. You're limited to only 24 frames a second. You lose the dual pixel autofocus, so focus kind of hunts and it's just not as powerful as it is when you have that dual pixel autofocus in 1080p. And there's a crop factor in 4K, which means it zooms in a lot, making it sort of unusable unless you use some ultra wide lenses or some other types of adapters. It's not that the 4K can't be used at all, and the image quality is actually very good if you're willing to set up a filmmaking rig and use manual focus, but for the average YouTuber, it's kind of a deal breaker if you want to be shooting a lot of 4K footage. And then one other con of the M50 is you don't have the same slow motion features that you would get in the A6400. Yes, you can do 1080p at 60 frames a second in the M50, and that looks great, but if you go up to 120 frames a second, which is 4x slow motion, that footage is only available in 720p. Now from our tests, it does look actually pretty great, but it's more of something cool to use at the pool with your kids jumping off the diving board in slow motion or kind of dabbling here and there in your vlogs. But if you really want 4K and you really need slow motion, then the Sony A6400 would be the better choice.
So So let's jump into the pros of the Sony A6400. Number one, we definitely notice the image quality is just superior to the M50. And that isn't to ding that the M50 isn't good. It has a great picture, but when you compare the two, there's definitely a difference, and you can notice it in these vlogging clips of Heather and Mel down in downtown Vegas, and jumping back and forth from the M50 to the 6400 clips, you just notice this one is better. So I think that's number one to note. Secondly, the Sony shoots 4K up to 30 frames per second versus the M50, which only shoots up to 24 frames per second. And number one, has a huge crop when you jump into 4K. And then secondly, you lose the dual pixel autofocus, making it hard to make content in front of the camera because it's so hard to keep yourself in focus. Now the 6400, you don't lose any features. The autofocus still remains strong. The 30 frames per second in 4K has a very slight crop, but totally makes this a fully functioning 4K camera for YouTube content. Another awesome thing about the Sony is that it shoots 1080p up to 120 frames per second. So if you really want to go creative and shoot really buttery, smooth, slow motion, 4x slow, you can do that with this camera. Another great thing about the 6400 is its autofocus. You know, Sony put in a artificial intelligent autofocus system into this camera. This autofocus is really reliable, it's strong, and dare we say here on Think Media, might be better than Canon's dual pixel autofocus. So when we were downtown, Sean was moving in and out of frame, and because it has the artificial intelligence technology they put in it, it still remembers Sean's face, which will make it very easy for you to make content by yourself by simply running up to the camera, tapping your face, and scooting all the way back, and it just knowing that you're in focus. And we've noticed from all of our tests and research that Sony has definitely fixed the overheating issues that have come in the past APC models, and so we're pretty pumped about that, which is an important thing because one of our favorite features about this camera is that it doesn't have a record limit. Most DSLR and mirrorless cameras have a cap of about 30 minutes on your record time, so when you hit that threshold, the camera is just gonna stop recording and then you're gonna have to record again. Now, if you're a solo content creator, like many people on YouTube, it's kind of hard to always wonder if you're gonna hit that 30-minute mark if you're doing take after take after take. Now, if you have enough card space and good enough battery, you're gonna be able to just shoot all the way through to get all your videos done. And I think it also makes this kind of like a camcorder because you don't have to worry about your time limit of recording. So maybe Johnny's sports game or, you know, Sally's recital, you can just record the thing all the way through. And then lastly, a feature that maybe filmmakers would appreciate is that this camera, the 6400, has picture profiles. So like Sony's S-Log 2 and 3, Hybrid Log Gamma, Cine 4, and all that means is you have the ability to shoot a flat image so that you can color correct in post, which is something that you can grow into. So that's what's cool about this camera. Although it's a little bit high in price in comparison to the M50, it's a camera that you can grow into, take into consideration the 1080 at 120 frames per second, being able to shoot in flat color profiles, the true 4K, the non-record limit. It's definitely a camera that you can just really, really grow with. But there's definitely some cons about this camera, and one of those being is the price point. For the 6400 and its kit lens, you're looking at about $1,000, and that's $400 more than M50's kit. So that's just something to take into consideration. Also, something to note is Sony's lenses selection is just a little more expensive. So even as you grow, it's just everything is just a little more expensive than Canon. Also, another con that Sean kind of touched on was the flip-up screen, which is awesome. However, it's in the way of the hot shoe. And so if you wanted to get an external mic, you're gonna put the external mic right on top of the camera, blocking your field of view, making the screen kind of pointless. There are some solutions that you can look into, and we'll put some links in the description below about some rigs or maybe some setups that move the mic in other places so you can still have access to your screen and your mic, but it then starts to get a little bit bulky. And then lastly, the final con would definitely be the lack of in-body image stabilization, which the M50 does not have. However, other Sony cameras do have that feature. So with this camera coming onto the market in 2019, I think a lot of people just expected to be on this camera, but I think Sony definitely wanted to keep the price point affordable, and most cameras don't have in-body image stabilization anyway. So if you're shooting with a tripod, if you want to get smooth footage, you can definitely invest in a gimbal, but it's definitely not a deal breaker, and you can create awesome YouTube content with this camera. So those are the pros and cons of each camera in our perspective, but we'd like to hear what you think about each camera. Which camera do you think is better, the 6400 or the Canon M50? Let us know in the comment section below. And we've also done in-depth videos about each camera, so we'll definitely put that link in the YouTube card and in the description below. But Sean, we covered both these cameras, and we definitely have come to the conclusion that these are both great cameras for YouTube. However, if someone's still on the fence or still thinking about it, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to the M50, I still believe that this is the best all-around camera for YouTube, hands down, when you consider price, features, and all of the above. If you don't need 4K, and it's my belief that most people don't, 4K is still not really mainstream. You can get away without it. Most computers or laptops are not ready to handle the editing of 4K. So you need to think about like your entire workflow. I think it also, when it comes to the M50, the fact that it's $600, you can shoot with it out of the box, but then you have more margin to upgrade your gear, which is something everybody needs to consider. Right. Their overall studio, their lighting, future lenses. And so from a budget standpoint, and even from a quality standpoint, I think that the M50 camera is what I would start with. But Omar, what are your thoughts as far as those that maybe are leaning towards the A6400?
No, I definitely agree with that. The M50, best camera for YouTube this year because of that budget and everything you get. But I would say the Sony A6400 and who it's for is that person who wants to get into a little entry-level freelance work. You know, I think if you're not gonna make 4K YouTube content, yeah, you don't need this camera. But one day 4K is gonna be mainstream. And if you wanna future-proof yourself for a couple $100 today or now, that you'll be able to have 4K when it becomes a little more mainstream. Also, because of its features, you can really step into entry-level freelancing. So not only will this camera is good for YouTube, but you can start using this camera to make money, shooting weddings, shooting promos for small businesses and things of that nature. So I think this camera can really be a money maker, which is definitely something to think about when you're making that investment.
Yeah, Omar, I completely agree. And I'm glad you brought up money too, because I think another way to put it is this. If I only had $1,000 total to spend this year, right, I would actually get the M50, because if I got that camera, all I could get is the camera and the kit lens and I'd be out of money. But I'd pick up the M50 because I would also want to get tripods, lighting. I'd be thinking about my overall impact that I need to make with that budget. However, if I had $1,500 or $2,000 to spend this year, I wouldn't hesitate from going with the A6400. There's no doubt the image quality is better. I'd want a future proof, and I would want that extra money to invest in those other accessories. So we hope that this video has been valuable for you. And if you think it has been valuable, can you smash the like button? That would mean the world to us. And then check out some of the links in the description below, because we definitely have some deeper dives on each of these cameras.